Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about how I felt after hiking 2,200 miles and having an emergency surgery on the Appalachian Trail. I'll be talking about how my emergency surgery had an effect on my overall through hike, and then how I felt physically after completing my through hike, and then also mentally. I know post through hiker depression, it is real, and I'll touch on that towards the end of the video. First, I'll talk about the surgery because I got a lot of questions about that, and I'll talk about how it kind of had a impact on my through hike. Y'all that have been here know I had emergency surgery on the 6th day of trail. I ended up getting an entire ovary removed from my body, and ovaries are like kidneys, you only need one, so I can still have kids, I still make all the hormones that I need. However, I think my hormones were a tad bit imbalanced after my surgery, and so I'll talk more about that in a minute, but basically I took 3 weeks off the trail to recover exactly. And then I got back on trail. I had skipped up 200 miles to stay on pace to summit Katahdin and also meet back up with my trail family. I was a little apprehensive about getting back on trail, so I wanted to be with people that knew my situation and I knew were there to look out for me. So when I got back on trail initially, it was really hard. I was having really bad vertigo symptoms, and I just was feeling dizzy. Of course, I was tired. My incisions were literally right here around my belly button and a little under my belly button, so right where my pack sat. Those still were a little sore. If I sneezed really hard, it felt like a knife was stabbing in my stomach. It was tough having the pack sitting on those incisions. And so I did a lot of slack packing when I got back, and the vertigo ended up going away, I would say like a week back. And I was just taking it day by day. It was really rough and it really sucked, and it was actually really scary too. After that though, I recovered pretty quickly. I started getting back into shape. As I said, I was slack packing a lot, and so my incisions healed up pretty quickly, and before I knew it, I was hitting 15s and 20s. Everything was good until my monthly cycle came, and that was when I could tell, like, okay, yes, something is a little off. Also, disclaimer, if you're a guy, you may want to skip through this next part because I'm going to be talking about periods. So most of the time when I did get my period on trail, I would make sure to take a 0, maybe even 2 zeros, because it was just painful. After my ovary removal, my cramps have been way more intense. And of course, your pack sits right where your uterus is, where you cramp, and so it was really hard for me to feel like hiking or even want to hike because I just felt like I was pushing my body in a way that I didn't want to after having all that happen. I really just felt like the whole time like my hormones were pretty imbalanced, and I think with women on trail it's easy for your hormones to get imbalanced anyway without getting an ovary removed because cortisol levels go up, which is a stress hormone, and things just get out of whack because you are putting your body through extreme constant exercise. That was hard on trail to say the least, and I think the worst part was starting my period day 1 of the 100-mile wilderness. First couple days of the 100 miles, we only did like 10 miles, and luckily James is very understanding, and he was, only gonna do what I wanted to do, so shout out to him for that. But that's why some days we did less miles or maybe took a 0 that I didn't really talk about during the time just because I felt a little weird about talking about it. I still do, but I feel like it's a good topic to cover for other women that may be going through the same thing and considering doing a through hike. It's totally okay to take a 0 and plan around your cycle. Going through this process has also helped me to be more aware of changes that a woman's body goes throughout the cycle each month. So I was experiencing irregular periods and cramps, which I think had stemmed from my ovarian surgery. But 2 months before I summited Katahdin, I had this terrible skin rash. And it started out just a couple bumps, which I thought were pimples or acne. And I thought it was weird because I've never had any acne or problems with my face. I've not even as a teenager growing up, never had problems with that. Very blessed. But it was odd, and it itched, and when I squeezed it was just water. So it was very strange. It didn't seem like it was acne at all. And it turns out it wasn't. It turned into a full-blown rash. And at this point, I thought I'd maybe touched some poison ivy or a poisonous plant. And I carried a prednisone script with me the entire time, and I started that. The rash did end up going away, and I took the prednisone for the prescribed amount that I would normally take it for poison ivy. And then I stopped it, and the rash came back with a vengeance. And so at that point I was like, okay, that is not what my poison ivy normally does. You know, I'm a very seasoned person with poison ivy. At this point on trail, I had about a month left, and I was in Maine. There's just nothing. There's no really walk-in clinics. There's no pharmacies near the trail. And I was just like, I'm just gonna have to make it to the end and then go to the doctor afterwards. And so that's what I did. And the rash was absolutely terrible. I'll put some pictures up. It was terrible. It itched, it stung, it was a nightmare. I was very worried about it for the last month. It was a lot of what occupied my mind, just because I have this strange rash on my face that was very uncomfortable as well. Long story short, I ended up going to the dermatologist, and I was diagnosed with perioral dermatitis. It can be caused by many different things. I believe that mine was caused by hormonal imbalance and extreme stress that I put on my body. Probably also not washing my face very often. All of these things just kind of caused this rash to go out of control. After I got off trail, I still was experiencing little flare-ups from the perioral dermatitis for about 2 to 3 months after completing the trail. The dermatologist was very helpful. She prescribed me some creams, and it eventually went away. The first one I'll show you guys, it's called metronidazole. It is a antibiotic cream, and this stuff works so good. And every time I had a spot pop up, I would just put some metronidazole on it, and it would pretty much clear up. And if it really wasn't going away, they also gave me this other cream called Elidel. And these are prescriptions from your dermatologist, so you can't just go get these over the counter. I will say that this cream was very expensive. I think I paid about $150 for this one. And the metronidazole, which luckily is the one that works the best for me, was covered by my insurance. The other thing that I use to help with my perioral dermatitis is this CeraVe Daily Moisturizing Lotion. And they actually gave me these little travel cases. This is the CeraVe Daily Moisturizer, and it has 30 SPF sunscreen in it. So these were really nice to carry on trail because it was small and travel size. I think that the ovarian surgery ultimately had something to do with my skin going crazy. Also, the negative side effects that I had with periods and my monthly cycle. And one of the hardest parts of all of it is just dealing with those intense emotions that you know when it's a hormonally driven emotion, because it just feels different. And it's almost like you can't control it. It's very strange, but anyway, maybe some of you understand what I'm talking about. So now that I've been back, some of the things that I've been doing to help with the hormonal imbalance is taking herbal supplements. I've been doing dandelion and really just eating certain foods in sync with my cycle. I have an app on my phone called Moody, and it kind of predicts your cycle and what your hormones are doing that day. Eating healthier food. You eat a lot of processed food on the Appalachian Trail, and I'm just not used to doing that in my normal life, so it was very different for me, and I think that also had an effect, of course, on how I was feeling. And so just getting back to eating whole, healthy foods has really done wonders for my body as well. Okay, so after finishing the trail, physically, I felt completely worn down. I was very tired. My entire body was just depleted. I actually ended up losing 20 pounds. So here's a before and after picture of how I started the trail and how I ended the trail. I had no idea that I had 20 pounds to lose, but looking at my Fitbit, I was clocking 5,000 to 7,000 calories burned a day, especially on days that we pushed over 20 miles. And of course, I was burning a lot more calories once we got farther north and we were doing more rock climbing than we were actual hiking. I would say that the thing that hurt the worst for me though was definitely my feet. They really weren't giving me too big of a problem towards the end of the hike, but when you go from hiking double-digit miles a day to not doing that, I felt like my feet just cramped up and all that muscle fascia was just so tight. My feet just hurt so bad for about a month after my thru hike. And so there were a few things that I did to help with that. One of my Christmas presents was a professional foot massage, and that seriously worked numbers on my feet. Just breaking up that fascia and loosening that muscle in my feet really helped. And after I did that, I would kind of just, whenever I sat down, just give my own self a foot massage. And I actually did buy a foot massager on Amazon, and it was only around $50, but I would put my feet on that foot massager for about 15 minutes in the morning when I first woke up, because that's when my feet hurt the worst, and then towards the end of the day, and that helped a ton. I will link the foot massager that I bought. It's great. I still use it, and it is heated, and it's just wonderful. And I was very surprised at how much it helped me and my feet after the trail. Another thing that I did to help my feet was use these. They are called yoga toes, and you see they're just like thick things, and you put your toes right here, and it kind of just spreads your toes out and stretches out all of your foot. And so I would just sit with these on my feet. I would normally do it like after I got out of the shower and I was just laying on my bed, and it would again help stretch out those muscle fibers and just keep my feet from just completely cramping up. So you can get those on Amazon. I will link those as well. So aside from my feet hurting, my whole body was super sore, and what I did for that was just be very kind to my body. I went probably a month without doing anything, any sort of exercise. I would maybe walk like a mile a day. My body needed that so bad. And it's crazy when you start really listening to your body. After about a month, when I had given myself time to recover, I would wake up some mornings and be like, okay, well, I feel like I could do a little bit more than a mile. And I would do it and I would feel good. And then eventually I would build up to doing like 5 miles like I'm doing right now. It was hard for me because as a very active person, before the trail I was doing CrossFit. I would go to the gym, lift super heavy weights, but that just wasn't the best thing for me after getting off trail and feeling the way I did. And so I've just really been focusing, even now, almost 5 months from my thru hike, I'm still doing very low impact type of stuff, focusing a lot on stretching. I went to a bunch of yoga classes when I first got back and was doing Pilates. And again, just very low impact stuff. Instead of focusing more on lifting heavy weights and doing all this high impact meathead stuff like I was normally used to doing, I'm just focusing on getting my steps in, and that's kind of how I'm training for the PCT, because it's a pretty quick turnaround from finishing the Appalachian Trail to getting on the PCT. So it's still a mix of letting my body recover enough so that I can do another 2,000 plus mile trail, but also preparing my body for that physical activity as well. Other things that I did to help my body was go to the chiropractor. I got some regular massages, which oftentimes you should check if you have health insurance. A lot of times you have like 30 free chiropractor visits year. Another thing that I do for free is this acupuncture mat. I also got this on Amazon. You can kind of see these are really sharp little plastic things, and you lay on this, and there's also the pillow for your neck, and I usually do this before I go to bed. And you kind of have to work up to it because at first it can be very, very intense. I know for me it feels like after I get off of it, my blood is just circulating in my back, and a lot of times when I have a headache, I'll lay my head on this. It'll get that blood flowing to my head, and I'll get rid of that headache. So I really have enjoyed using this acupuncture mat, and I think it's been really good for my recovery as well. The last thing I'll talk about that I did to help with my body soreness was taking Epsom salt baths. And you can get the Epsom salts at the store. I get the lavender ones, and they smell so good. And you can either just fill up like a little pan and stick your feet in it, or put it in a bathtub and let your whole body soak. And I just feel so good after I do that, and it really helped ease my muscle pain. Okay, so lastly, I'll kind of touch on post-through hike depression. I did experience that a little bit, and I think it's just hard because you go from such a stark difference of life on trail back to normal life. It's just sad because you miss your friends. For me, I was missing James a lot, and we weren't really sure how we were gonna see each other because he lived in Virginia and I lived in Arkansas, and obviously all that worked out. And all of it always does. I had just had to focus on praying and stepping boldly into this new chapter of life. But it is hard, and I know some of my friends are still struggling with post-trail depression, and it's important to reach out to the people that you met on trail and check in on them every once in a while, because it can be a really hard transition time for some people, especially those who kind of go on trail trying to figure out what they want to do, and sometimes you don't figure it out and you come back to life and you're still stuck and in not knowing what you want to do next in your life, and you are forced to get back to the rat race of making money and just surviving. Just try to remember what I learned from the trail and the good experiences that I had out there and how much I gained from it. And that's kind of what's helped pull me through. And then also just putting my faith in God and knowing that everything happens according to His plan. And I may not understand what that plan is, but if I keep just trusting in Him, I know that everything is going to work out the way that it's supposed to. So that's kind of how I've been recovering from the trail, and then also preparing for my next through hike of the PCT. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'd love to interact with you before I leave for the PCT, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thanks. Bye.